But tonight, I'd really like to focus on resumes. I don't know how many of you actually have a resume. So we're going to cover the big topics tonight. And I wanted to really just make sure that you felt confident as you're moving forward. You know, it can be scary just rounding any transition. And right now, you're transitioning from being that full-time student to being a full-time employee, or possibly you're going on to graduate school, or maybe you're doing volunteer service or military service. No matter what that next step is for you, more than likely, you're probably going to have a resume to get open into that next door. So we want to share with you tonight some of just some basic guides, basic tips to get started, and then what do you need to do next to make sure that that resume can be critiqued? What do you need to do to upload it and to start sending that out to other people? So I like this slide that just is a good overview of what does it mean to have the different parts of a resume. And the biggest thing is that you want to focus on what makes you unique. A resume is kind of like a puzzle piece. Your resume is one side of the puzzle, but the job description, the company, the graduate school, that's going to be the other side of the puzzle. And so you've got to make the pieces of that puzzle fit together. So you don't just want to have one generic resume that you send out to everybody. You really want to think, what makes me special? What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that I have that the employer is looking for or that graduate school is looking for? So the first step, and I always try to keep it simple when I'm helping anyone with career development, is one, you need to know yourself, and two, you need to do some research. And if you're doing those two things, then you're moving forward. So part of knowing yourself is knowing what are the top 3 to 5 skills that I have to offer someone. And then 2 is researching what types of things does that employer, that graduate school, what do they need me to be able to do? And you've got to, again, try to put those pieces together for them. Now, you can see from this slide some of the main things that you need to be thinking about. So the first thing I would just say on a clean sheet of paper is, what are the top 3 to 5 skills that I have to offer someone? Is it communication skills? Is it problem solving? Am I really good at fundraising? Am I good at presenting to groups? Am I a good writer? All of those things, you just get those on paper. What are the top 3 to 5 things that I need to communicate to somebody that I can do them, and I have confidence that I can do them? Now, here's how you can have confidence that you have those skills. Looking at these bullets on this slide, have you had any internship experience in that? And that's one of the best ways that you can show that you have the experience that you need to an employer. So if you haven't had an internship, then maybe you just have to pull in, what is the knowledge that I've gotten from relevant coursework? Maybe I did a capstone senior project or a research project. Maybe I did a really major research paper or presentation. So maybe your coursework is the most relevant knowledge that you have. Or possibly volunteering. I know for some, maybe you weren't able to get an internship or a job working in something like human services, but you volunteered. And so getting some training on, how did I do victims advocacy training, or am I CPR certified? Maybe I worked in the summers as a lifeguard, and so I'm CPR certified. All of those are the types of things you want to start pulling in. So think about your community work, your summer jobs, even your part-time jobs, but still always coming back to, how did those jobs show that I can do the 3 to 5 skills that I know that I'm really good at? And even being a leader on campus, maybe you were a captain or an officer of a student organization or of an athletic team. Even if you were highly involved in a leader in TRIO, what were the things that you gained? The knowledge, maybe it's project, maybe it's event-based. What did I do that I could give evidence? I could tell a story that I have those skills. Plus, if your GPA is 3.0 or above, we usually recommend that you put that on a resume. If it's lower than 3.0, then you may just want to focus in on some other skills. But these are the main gist of how you tell that story about what makes you special. What are the knowledge, skills, and activities that I've done that show evidence that I have those top 3 to 5 skills that really make me me? Now, some of the biggest mistakes that some people can make on resumes is that they're very non-specific. So you can see this is an example of just a bad summary or an introduction. I'm seeking an entry-level position. I'm going to be a hard worker that's very motivated to help your organization. Things like that are very often used on a resume, and those are very generic. You want to try to be very specific to the industry or the field that you're interested in. So if you're a business major or you're a religion major, then you want to talk about that. An aspiring head pastor or an aspiring marketing assistant, a psychology grad with a pulse on the consumer mindset. So you're saying what your major is, you're saying what your career goals are, and you're really connecting those to the skills or the knowledge that you already have. And we talk a lot, and you'll see some examples in a minute, about how to write accomplishment statements. And even just saying sales goals were met is not quite as strong as actually using quantitative information. So if you have anywhere on your resume that you can highlight numbers, percentages, dollar signs, I exceeded my goals by 12%, or handled a $2,000 budget and met goals under budget, those are things that make that resume really stand out. So that's just another example of how things can kind of go wrong in a resume. And more than anything, I see recent graduates putting on resumes things like only putting things that they did from high school, or not really connecting it to, again, what their goal is, what they want to do. If I saw your resume, I may not have an idea of what you really want to do. And that's where, again, that first step is knowing yourself and knowing the types of jobs that you're interested in. And then you can really target that resume towards the field of interest. Now, getting the right format. And I want to show you some of the things that we have at Southern Wesleyan at the Career Services Office that can really be helpful examples to you when it comes to writing your resume. So as we look at formatting, you'll see there's lots of different formats. And I'll just say, when it comes to resume writing, there is not one right way to do it. You'll see lots of different styles and templates. And a lot of people go online and just search for resume samples, or they go onto Word and just download a Word template. And you can use those things. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with templates, because what's good is they get you started, they get you on paper, but in the long run, they tend to make the resume hard to edit. And so you just want to move like one line down, and then you can't because you're just stuck in this box. Or the way that they formatted it, there's a lot of things that we probably would not suggest. And so one of the things that I'm going to show you from the Career Services website is how to get a career guide. And it is a career template that you can look at that has lots of really good examples. So if you go to swu.edu/career services, and on the link here left, we'll look at resources for students and alumni. And in that section, you can get to all of the online services that we're providing right now. So even if you're working online or working from home, these are things that you can use 24/7. You don't have to be in the office. And I really encourage all of our seniors to make sure to take advantage of this now, even while you're at home, even while you're waiting, even if you're not sure what that next step is going to be for you as seniors. Don't just sit and wait. There are some absolute steps that you can be doing through these resources for students and alumni that are going to be moving you in the right direction. So you definitely don't want to wait on that. What I'm going to show you tonight is Optimal Resume. And if you forget anything that we talk about tonight, always check out these PDF guides, because it gives you step-by-step instructions of how to do all the things that I'm sharing with you tonight. If you're starting to write a cover letter or a resume, these are the two links that you're going to want to use. Looking at the cover letter samples, and then here is the Optimal Resume samples. And so as we were talking about formatting, the very first part of the resume, and what I love about this particular site, is that you can break down and look at samples from all different types of industries or categories. So that's why, again, it's good to know yourself, know the type of industry that you're interested in, because then you can click at something. So if, let's say you're a business major, you're thinking about working in the finance industry, I would click business and financial. I would select the entry-level samples, so that you can see some samples very specific to that job, and that it aligns kind of with your experience right now. We're just going to check out the financial analyst sample and kind of look at that. So the overall look at a resume is that at the beginning, of course, you're going to have your contact information at the top. You're going to list your graduation, what your major is, again, that GPA, if it's above a 3.0, when you're graduating. If you have that relevant coursework, that might be a good way to connect that, especially if you don't have any internship or related work experience. You need to at least pull in the related knowledge or course projects that you have. But of course, if you have an internship, this is going to be the best way for you to highlight the skills, the knowledge that you have that's going to be really important to that employer. And what's good is that you can see from these examples how to write a good action bullet. Sometimes I found that's the hardest thing to do on a resume. You kind of know the skills that you have, but it's really hard to word that. And so kind of the formula that I normally use is you start with a good action verb, so shadowed or designed. You say what you did with enough specifics that it highlights the skills that you have. So you don't just want to say sent emails. That's not a whole lot of discussion or a lot of detail. You set up a whole email campaign to a list of 1,000 clients that are promoting upcoming financial planning workshops hosted at the office. And so this it's brief, it's concise, and you do want it concise, but you're giving enough details with quantitative information that it really stands out about what you did. And not every single work experience you have to have has to be related. I normally like to have a section that says like related experience and additional experience. So you can highlight the most related experience, and maybe the most related experience you've had was a volunteer experience. You can still put that up under a related experience section, even if that's not a paid work experience. You could just say volunteer case manager or volunteer tax preparer. And like you can see here, even under the volunteer work, that's a great way to get financial experience. Even though you're getting trained in a volunteer capacity and you're helping people, you're still learning a lot of those relevant skills. And then making sure to not forget the leadership, the activities that you've had on campus, but really trying to focus on the things that you've done while you're a college student. So this is the very basics of writing a format. And you'll see there's lots of different styles here. There's not one right style. You just kind of have to pick the one that you like the most. And then you can, and I usually suggest to copy and paste that onto a blank sheet of paper so that you have full editing control over it, and then you can tweak it and make it look like this. I do like a good summary. I feel like having a summary at the top catches their attention of the core skills, what they need to know about you. In 5 to 10 seconds, you grab their attention right at the beginning of the resume. But then if you say you have these skills up here, then there should be a bullet. There should be an example that shows evidence or supports that you have skills or knowledge in that. So make sure if you put a skill or knowledge up here, make sure that you give an example through your bullets or through your accomplishments, these statements below that show evidence that you have that skill. Another thing I wanted to highlight on Optimal Resume, which is pretty cool, is this section that talks about things that you want to highlight. So it gives you very specific tips if you're interested in the business field. These are other words, maybe key phrases that might be buzzwords for the business or financial field. So being able to have Series 7 or doing things that are extra certifications or that you know how to do planning and analysis or use statistical analysis, those all might be useful words that you could highlight in your resume that are, again, targeted to that industry. But it's hard to know what the right words should be unless you've done your research. So that's the second part, is really researching those companies and organizations to make sure that you know what's important to them. And usually the job description, if you just highlight those verbs in the job description, you'll have an idea of the type of things that you might need to highlight on your resume. So we talked a little bit about formatting. And I want to let you know this guide is actually from College Recruiter. They've got a lot of really cool links and resources. So you can just search, and actually I'll send these links to you guys. They're in some of the handouts that I'll be sending to seniors that are taking part in this. Another thing to be mindful of is just that many times when you're uploading your resume, maybe on Indeed or something that has a whole lot of, so it might be your resume against hundreds of thousands of other applicants. Many times they'll use automated scanners, machines that will like look for those keywords. So again, that's why it's really, really important to know what are the keywords that are important in this industry and how do I highlight those keywords. You never want to lie on a resume. So if you haven't had statistical analysis experience, then don't say that you have. But if in a class assignment you had to use an Excel spreadsheet of data that was given to you and you had to run statistical analysis on it, then say, ran statistical analysis on a data set of 200 records. You are not lying. You are saying, I did this. Now, maybe you didn't get paid for it, but don't shortchange yourself to say, I have some of these skills that are in the job description. I wanted to take a second too, just as a word for wisdom for women. Many times research shows that men will very frequently apply to jobs that even if they only meet 50% of those requirements, they may be willing to take that risk and go ahead and apply. I would say for women, they usually don't apply to it unless they feel like they meet 100% of the requirements. So while again, you never want to lie on a resume, and of course, if you don't meet any of the requirements on the job description, then there's really no point in you applying and wasting your time or anybody else's time if you don't have a fit for that job. But if you do have interest in that and you meet at least 50% of those requirements, it may be worth going ahead and applying to that job. That's one of the things that as an entry-level applicant, it's not going to hurt to go ahead and put your best foot forward, take the time to research, but then apply to things, even if you're not quite sure if you're the right fit for that. And the way that you really make your resume competitive against some of the other applicants there is that you target it. So one of the things that it lists here is a master resume. And I do encourage students, if you don't have anything started yet, to just go ahead and start that master resume. And that has all of your work experiences, all of your volunteering, all of your classes. If you have class projects that stand out, just get that on a sheet of paper. And you know what? That might be longer than 1 or 2 pages, but that's your master resume. That's not necessarily something that you give out. But then once you find a job description that you're really interested in, then you can copy and paste and tweak or cut out the things that really don't apply to the job, and then you can get it down to 1 pages, which is what we recommend for a recent graduate, or at the most 2 pages. Some students may have 2 pages of relatable experience, but for undergraduates, more times than not, you really only have 1 page of related experience. And so that way you don't have to rewrite a resume every time. But again, you don't just want 1 resume. If you apply to 10 jobs, you don't want just 1 resume that you send out to everybody. You need to tailor even 5 to 10 tweaked resumes that really have those keywords on the job description. But having that master resume that you just keep adding to as you have more experiences in a summer job this summer, and different class projects, you're just keeping adding to it. And a resume is really a living, breathing document. It's never something that you just create right now and then you're done. It's going to be something that you continue to grow and to improve over time. And one of the things I just wanted to point out, even in the career guides that we have at Optimal Resume, is that there are so many different types of examples. If you're thinking of working for government, there's federal types of examples. And what I love about federal examples here is that they're so different, but this guide here gives you a lot of tips and strategies about how to apply to federal jobs. They're gonna ask for a lot more details than might be in just a typical resume, but this federal sample will show that. Or if you've had any military experience, this kind of breaks down the military to civilian. So you don't ever want to discredit your military experience, but sometimes you have to translate it into something that is more understandable by civilian populations. So I wanted to highlight too, this is an example of a functional resume. You can see it's a little bit different maybe than some of the other samples that we've had, but you still have the same summary, you're still highlighting your education. But here in the military experience, they put their bullets not just in chronological order of jobs, but they put it under these key functions: operations management and project coordination. So that's another thing. If you feel like you have limited experience, you don't have an internship, you don't have a summer job, you may just want to say related experience and highlight your bullets under key skills or functions that you have. So again, maybe it's presentation skills, maybe it's creativity, and you're putting bullets, and these bullets aren't even work experiences. They're class projects. They're something that you did in a summer job. They're leadership positions, but you're highlighting and pointing out the fact that I do have these skills that you're looking for, and here's evidence or examples of how I've accomplished that skill. So that's just, to me, another good example about how to write resumes using a functional approach. But there is lots of good marketing or military examples in there. We're not going to address video resumes today, but there's all different types of styles of how to make resumes. And a virtual one is something that you can use even on like LinkedIn. We talked about LinkedIn, some previous workshops, recording yourself, talking about what your key skills are. So if you want to read more about that, you can look in this guide. But kind of coming down into closure as we look at these final steps, the biggest thing is that you do want to make sure, above all, that there aren't any errors in that. Make sure that you proofread it. Make sure that you have a friend or a family member read that resume and look at it and edit things for you. But also, I'd strongly encourage you to take advantage of the professional resources that you have at Southern Wesleyan. So from the Career Services Office, if you just click on Schedule an Appointment from the Career Services website, this is just a home Career Services website, you can schedule a one-on-one resume critique with me from the Career Services Office. So you just click the Schedule an Appointment button and find a day and a time that works for you. It's super easy to do. We can meet over the phone or we can meet virtually. So don't wait and think, oh, I'm not ready to work on my resume. Like, now is the time. You don't want to wait 6 months from now to start applying and getting in the job search. And I will say it's going to be a very competitive job search. We're in a different day and age with so much that has happened recently with COVID-19. And so you want to make sure that there's nothing that keeps you out of the running for this. So you want to get your resume ready now. You want to get it critiqued. You want to get it edited. You want to get it as that there's nothing on that resume that's going to get you thrown out of the pile just because of something silly, a minor error with grammar or spelling or just the way that formatting could be to make it better. So again, take advantage of those free resume critiques. And then when it comes to job searching, once you've done all those things, you've created a good resume, you've targeted, you know yourself, you feel confident in the examples that you've shared. Now, what you need to do is actually use it and apply. So you can have that resume, but a lot of times students just upload their resume into Indeed and then wait and kind of say, okay, let's see what happens. I'll look for a job. But there's lots of great ways to use LinkedIn to connect with people that are already in those fields, and maybe they don't have a job posted, but it may be a SWU alumni or somebody that's doing a job of interest that you're interested in, you could connect with them, maybe even try to do a job shadow, an informational interview. And then after talking with them, you could submit that resume to them and just say, do you have any advice for me? You know, how did you get your foot in the door into this field? And so not only are you getting free advice from somebody that works in that field, but you're networking. And really, that's going to be one of the best ways to get your foot in the door is a warm contact with somebody, a friend, a family member, somebody that you know, a SWU alumni, a faculty member, versus just uploading your resume into job boards and just waiting for that perfect job to be posted. I would also encourage you to be looking at there are some different industries that are hiring now that are a little different. Obviously, things in the healthcare setting and retail and things like Amazon, pharmacies. There's a lot of need in the supply chain and logistics areas that maybe you hadn't considered before, but those have a really great hiring need. And so you want to look at your resume and say, what skills and knowledge do I have that can maybe pivot into some of these fields that I hadn't anticipated before, but this may be something that I could actually qualify for. So when you actually submit your resume, and I like to call it going fishing. So I don't go fishing very often. My children and my husband do. But instead of fishing with a rod like they do, I like to imagine it of fishing with a net. And so let's say you do some research online and you see 5 different jobs that have the job title of interest. Well, you need to submit those resumes to those 5 jobs, kind of cast that net, pull it in, and let's see if you get any bites. See what happens. See if you get callbacks. Now, if you don't get any callbacks from them, then you need to cast your net again. You need to use something different, maybe like LinkedIn, and do some research in the cities that you're interested in, or in companies, or who are SWU alumni on LinkedIn. If you use the alumni portal there, then you can see who are all the SWU alumni with my major in psychology. Where are they working? What cities are they working in? What companies are they working in? And then you can start to look for those 3 to 4 companies and apply with them. If you don't hear anything back, then you need to keep casting. And that's the thing. Job search is never something that you just one and done. You know, I create my resume and I'm done. Or I submit my resume once and I wait. You've got to keep casting because you never know where that bite's going to come from. So once you've got all of those steps done, the final thing is just to follow up. So keep casting. You know, don't call the recruiter the next day after you apply. If they say, we'll call you by July 1, then wait until July 1. You don't have to follow up, you know, over and over again. But a lot of times people say, well, I submitted 3 weeks ago, the deadline's passed, I haven't heard anything. It's okay to email someone and say, just want to check to make sure you got my cover letter, my resume. Are there any questions that you have? Make sure there's not any further questions that you have. So the resume is actually going to be the tool that gets you the interview. But just know that the interview is actually what's going to get you the job. But before you can even get the interview, you've got to get that resume in place, because usually 9 times out of 10, the resume is what actually gets your foot in the door to have the interview. So our next workshop series is actually going to be looking at interviews and how do I practice interviews and how do I feel confident now that I've got my knowledge, skills, and abilities down on a piece of paper. Now, how do I get those skills verbally in an interview? So that's what we're going to be talking about next. But I just want to thank all of you for taking part in the workshop today. And one of the things I'm going to be sending you, hang on just a second, is this resume checklist. And so after you have your resume done, I really encourage you to just go through, make sure you follow some of these basic formatting guidelines. You've got it to that 1 to 2 pages, that you have the right contact information, that you've really thought about that summary and written it well, that you have all of the education information that you need. You've highlighted honors and GPA if that's good. Maybe really focusing on writing good, strong action statements and using Optimal Resume to help you see how do I write some of those action statements. And then making sure not to discount volunteer experience or other knowledge and skills certifications that you have that would make you competitive in this. So as you read that resume, you need to also think, okay, does this connect to the job description? Is this what I'm really, am I connecting to what I see in the job description? And so I want to finalize by just saying any questions that you have, make sure to go to swu.edu/career services to schedule an appointment with me. Again, all of our resources for student alumni, we've got great career resources that you can follow up with any of your job search questions. So anything related to resume or interview, we've got so much great tips for you on our website. So make sure you take advantage of that as a senior. And we, again, are just so excited for you. Thank you for taking advantage of the workshop and learning everything that you can do so that you can be a competitive job seeker as you continue on to this countdown to graduation.